Welcome to the Photography Opinion Podcast. We discuss all things photo, video, and camera related. I'm Ben Lucas.
And I'm Stuart Marlantis.
And this is Photo Op. Welcome to episode 1 of the Photo Op Podcast, all things photo opinion. I am Ben Lucas, and this is my co-host, Stuart.
Hello, hello.
All right, so today we are talking about, do you delete photos? So, quick show of hands, do you delete photos? I do.
I don't, really. Asterisks.
So when we started researching this episode, researching is a very loose term in this context, you're like, no, I never delete anything for any reason.
Yeah, I would say compared to the vast majority of people, I never delete anything. I will elaborate during the show to talk about exactly what that means. I would say that there's a little bit of ambiguity there, but pretty much I never delete anything.
And then we'll be talking about my rules for what I do and don't delete. And then I think we'll also be getting into how we organize all the data hoarding that we have. Because if you're a photographer, you take hundreds of photos. If you're a videographer, you have probably less clips but more data.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And if you don't delete anything, then you've just got tons of stuff you have to store. So yes. It's a fun time.
So so the prompt for this episode actually came a question from Mike B. I've been wrestling with this one for a while because I use Lightroom CC, not Classic. One of the major limitations is that it is based solely on cloud storage, for which Adobe charges exorbitantly.
Oh yeah.
The issue is made worse with the addition of PSD files from Photoshop. All of this has led me to choosing whether I should delete images. I am torn over deleting files, though. On one hand, it saves space and makes the library cleaner to use. On the flip side, I can't help but fear that I'm deleting something that I want later. What would you do? All right, so thanks, Mike B, for asking the question.
Great question.
All right, so Stuart, I'll let you kind of get started.
First, I would definitely not use a Lightroom CC unless you absolutely have to. Maybe someday in the future, far beyond the recording of this podcast, that's the only option. Unfortunately, I could see Adobe pushing it permanently. But
so currently it's spring of 2020, and I do not use Adobe CC. I do not use Lightroom CC. I use Lightroom Classic.
Same here.
Because Lightroom Classic uses storage on your computer, not on their.
I have certainly tested both Lightrooms, but I stick with Classic. I want everything local. It's not enough storage for me. I think right now, if you buy a subscription, it's like 1 terabyte, which seems like a lot until you do like a couple shoots, and then all of a sudden it's like half full in your.
It seems like a lot
at first,
especially if you're using like a Canon Rebel that's only like 15 megapixels or something.
Or if you're just editing photos off your phone or something.
Right. If you're editing photos on your phone, 1 terabyte is like a lifetime.
Yeah.
But unless you're shooting like iPhone RAW or something.
Caveat. Yeah, I shoot RAW. I shoot RAW on my phone, so.
I don't. So the JPEGs are like a megabyte and a half or something.
When I went to Japan, I had literally 100 gigs of stuff on my phone from just that.
Oh geez.
Like 2 weeks, 100 gigs on my phone, so that's 1/10 of that terabyte already.
So yeah, but since my phone is old and awful, I shoot everything with a real camera. Not to say that phones aren't real camera. That's a discussion for another episode.
That's a good podcast.
But no, so I shoot everything with my DSLR, and I have about 18 terabytes worth of stuff. So and I know you have way more.
Oh yeah, a lot. My main server is at 100. I think it's 106 or something. It's just north of 100 terabytes usable, like 130 something raw, just because I have some disk redundancy in there. So I have a lot of capacity. As for how much is stored there, it varies quite a bit. I shoot a lot of 4K video. I switched few years back to full 4K workflow on every camera. So GoPros are all 4K, phone is 4K. I don't shoot any video that's not 4K. So I Yeah, that's a lot of space.
Yes.
Yeah.
That is a lot of space for
many
sure.
dozens and dozens and dozens of gigs minimum. Or dozens of terabytes, excuse me. Gigs, of course.
So, deleting photos, storage is pretty cheap, which I think is your primary reason why you say you don't delete stuff.
Yeah, my philosophy is when it's full, buy a new hard drive and keep buying. Just
keep buying.
It's cheap enough. That's like a sunk cost for me.
So actually, I did want to mention, because we buy the same hard drives when they go on sale. Tell the good people where they can get the best price for hard drives.
All right, so the best way to do large scale storage right now is, and again, spring 2020, this is the best way to do it currently. And it's been this way for quite a few years now, so it's probably going to continue that way in the future. But it is what's called shucking external hard drives. So just to give an example, a like 10 terabyte internal drive just sold as an internal drive will be hundreds of dollars, like $300-400. A 10 terabyte external drive that you just plug in with USB is $180 right now, last time I checked,
which we get on sale for like $149
$140, $160, it depends. But the reasons for that are mostly just kind of economy of scale stuff, or overproduction that then are put into externals that are sold cheaply, or production guarantees by buying, like Best Buy buying millions of them in bulk in one go. It's just economies of scale why that works out. But that is the best way to do it, is buy the biggest capacity external drive you can on sale. So that varies, generally 8, 10, 12. Now there are 14s out. Try to shoot for $15 per terabyte, roughly, is about the sweet spot. So once a drive hits about $15 a terabyte, jump on it and buy it, and ideally buy a few if you can.
Because when I was in college, they were like $30 a terabyte.
Yeah, and again, as of recording this, if you're listening to this in the future, as of spring 2020, $15 a terabyte was the way to go. And that's just going to decrease over time. But it's actually held at 15 for the past couple of years. So we're slow right now. We're at a very, very, very slow decline in price. So we'll see. But that's the way to go, is shuck external drives. There's tons of videos out there online about how to do it. Basically,
you have one.
I have one. Basically, it's just...
we'll put down in the notes or the description a link to your video.
And really, just to describe it really quickly, you basically just push the plastic tabs in the casing away from each other, and then the drive just pops out, and it's just a normal internal drive. You just put it right in your computer or server or rack or whatever you're doing, and you're good to go. So it's really, it sounds scary or weird. It really isn't, and it's the best way to get your terabytes for cheap.
Absolutely. So I did want to circle back around to the main question. So do you delete photos? Or in this case, data, since I know you shoot a lot of video. So for me, I delete a lot. If I'm shooting on set and I have just a spare minute, I'll look down at my camera, I'll thumb through the good ones. I will rate the ones that I want to immediately be able to find later. I have the back of my camera set up, so I don't do 1 through 5 star ratings in camera either, just like the good ones are the good ones. If I'm shooting a wedding and I know this is the photo that I'm going to want to post tonight at 2 a.m. as soon as I get home so that they can see something immediately, then they get the rest in 2 weeks, I'm starring that photo so I don't have to scroll and try and find it again. Makes sense. The other thing too is, like, if someone just makes a blink or an awful face, I'll do this one for a thumbnail. So if someone does something really awful like that, podcast listeners, you miss nothing. Then I will just delete that right on the back of the camera. I know I'm not going to want it later. Otherwise, I try not to delete too much in camera because there might be something that I missed or that I'm not seeing, or with fresh eyes, I like it later. So I was actually just saying this earlier. So there's a lot of people chimed in with answers to Mike's question, do you delete photos? And one of them said, yes, a lot of people said I delete photos of my shoes. And before we started taping, Stuart, you were like, what? Who deletes?
The equivalent of that for me is like setting up a camera on a stand. And I have so many clips of me like adjusting
your hand over the lens,
my hand, like or the classic GoPro face where you've got like it low and it's this really unflattering angle. Like, oh yeah, I've got lots of that. So maybe I don't have pictures of or video of my shoes, but a lot of GoPro face.
That one, yeah, for sure.
Tripod face.
I was actually just doing a shoot a month ago before all this quarantine crazy started, and so I took the shot with my 7200. I put it in the crook of my arm, and then I asked the couple to do a pose adjustment. And when I pulled it back up, I had taken 2 pictures of the grass. So like. It happens. I get it. Those, if I catch them in camera, I'll delete them in camera. Otherwise, when I import everything, I'm not deleting once I sit down at my computer. Once I sit down at my computer, I'm not going through the camera anymore. Everything that's on the camera gets imported to Lightroom or however you organize your photos. But I will go through and I will do a first pass. So if it is heinously, egregiously out of focus, I'm not talking about like, oh, it actually should be on the eye and it's on the nose. I will leave that and we can talk about like blurriness and sharpness later.
Yeah.
Maybe a new episode, how sharp is acceptable. But the ones that are heinously, egregiously bad, it focused on the tree 20 yards behind them instead of them. Those are gone. The photos of the grass and my shoes, those are gone. All of the ones that are complete rejects, like there's no reason I would want them, they're gone. However, if something is a funny blooper the client might want to see, that stays. If something is a lighting test of like, hey, I did this light, I took the shot, great, that light's how I want it, those stay, because I do a lot of tutorials, and I might want to go back through old jobs and show you how did I build that, how did I get to that lighting setup. So all my setup stuff stays, all of my lighting tests stay, all the bloopers stay. If it's funny, if I find it amusing for any reason, it stays. Clients with a good sense of humor like seeing those photos where I said, hey, did the flash fire? And he looks up into the light and goes, like people like that.
I'm sure you feel out when you're working with a client. You feel out whether they appreciate that stuff or not, and then you can go from there.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. If someone would be like, "Oh my god, you delete that right now," like deleted first pass. For sure. With abandon, for sure. So I'll go through that first pass and I'll delete. Once I get to that point, I have deleted, hopefully not too many rejects. Hopefully I'm not that bad of a photographer. But I have pretty much deleted everything I'm going to delete at that point. Getting from, hey, these 4 photos, because I was doing a motor drive with the couple kissing, they all look very similar. I'm not deleting any of those extra similar photos. I'm just choosing the one that I think is best, or maybe the 2 that I think are the best, the one right before the kiss and then the one where they're actually making contact. I'm showing those 2 to the client and saying which one do you like better.
You have options.
But yeah, so I delete up to a point. When we were recording this video right now, we both hit record. We were about to start talking. And I said, oh, right, I had a question to read. And then I started reading it through you and like, we should actually do that on air. We were kind of doing some prep talk. I said, let's stop that. I will, as soon as we're done talking here, I'm going to delete that recording. I don't need it anymore. I don't know how you feel about it. I don't want it. I don't need it. I don't need to store that.
Is it my turn?
Yeah.
That's all very nice, but the easy answer is don't ever delete anything, and then you don't have to think. I will say there is a little asterisk with that statement. I don't delete anything basically ever, except in extremely egregious circumstances. So I never delete anything in camera. I just move on. Like if I don't like it, I just move on. I'll just deal with it later or not. And I just go. Like I just won't. When I'm shooting something, photo or video, I just don't stop shooting at all to pay attention to any of that stuff. Which isn't really necessarily the right reason. Because I'm not as artistically skilled as Ben is, I only get things through quantity and not quality of skill. So I'm always like, keep shooting and try to make sure that I get one that's good. And
I definitely do that too.
Well, yeah, but
they just never see the bad ones.
Especially so is what I'm saying. Like I'm just like, oh, I know I suck, so I need to keep shooting. But then, so the only things that I'll ever delete is like there's absolutely no way that this would ever have any value, whether as reference or as like if it's just totally blurry, totally underexposed, like it's just dark or just totally blown out. If there's something that's just like egregious to that level, I will delete it. Although often I'm so lazy about it and it's just so my style to not delete anything, I'll just leave it anyway. Like I'll just I'll worry about that later. It's kind of how that goes. So it has to be so egregious to the point where I actually like it's egregious where it actually kicks it into my brain and I look at it and I say, that's awful, I should delete that right now. But otherwise that pretty much never happens. So I don't delete anything. I'll bring stuff into Lightroom or into Premiere. I'll pretty much keep that stuff forever at that point. I mean, once it hits my computer, it almost never gets deleted. Why? I like having a lot of reference of my old work. Like I have everything, like everything on every device on every day that I've ever shot a photo, back years and years now. And it's all backed up everywhere on my server, in the cloud, everywhere. There's all sorts of stuff. So I'm just kind of like a digital pack rat in that way, and I like hoarding everything. And sometimes,
which sometimes I do appreciate about that though,
yeah.
Because I'm like, hey, if I ask someone else, hey, do you have that file? They're like, no, sorry, I don't have it anymore. I ask you, do you have that file? I know yes. You have that file.
So yeah, it just comes from a place of I like collecting, and digital collecting is a way for me to collect without filling a physical space. And I have a interest in history. I volunteer for a museum, total side note, but just kind of addition to this conversation. I see a lot of value in preserving stuff for the future. I might be like, oh, that thing in the background of that photo, I remember when that building was there and now it isn't, or I remember that that person or that tree or whatever. I mean, there's stuff all around me where I've seen it change just even in the past couple of years, and because of throwaway photos that I didn't delete or throwaway video that I didn't delete, I can see that stuff again or have a reference to that stuff. So that's kind of my philosophy for never deleting, is you never know when you're going to see something that it was worth keeping. That being said, that's ridiculous, because it's still 95+% of the time that's not going to happen. So it's just overcompensation for very, very rare situations.
I do understand that though. So I actually did an engagement shoot at Duckbill Rock, yeah. Which for those of you Googling at home, does not exist anymore. Some kids were awful and destroyed it. But about a month or two before that happened, I got to do an engagement session down there on the Oregon coast and got the couple to stand up there, and I got that photo. Well, something happened with the couple, and it, they are no longer getting married. So that was a photo that was like, out of respect to them, I don't want to show it. But then the Duckbill Rock incident happened and it got destroyed, and it's like, well, this is history. This is relevant. This is relevant. This is something that like I got that can never happen again.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. And part of that is because I shoot a lot more like nature and wildlife and stuff than you do. So for me, that's part of it, is just like, like stuff that I shoot underwater. Like there's a lot of, terrible GoPro stuff and terrible, my little Sony mirrorless that I was shooting underwater with for a while. There's lots of stuff that's just like, it's throwaway. But like when I went to the Great Barrier Reef and shot stuff there, like I have stuff that literally doesn't exist anymore due to the degradation and the bleaching of corals, and then the loss of fish and stuff as a result. Like, does anybody really care about this kind of out of this, very poorly framed picture of some fish? Not really. They're going to care more about all of the, BBC.
But a researcher will.
Yeah,
or
a researcher
news
might.
Article saying this fish is extinct.
Exactly. And that's the kind of stuff I do. Like, even in my volunteering work, like I go and shoot surveys of stuff underwater because we're worried about the loss of species, and I just keep all that stuff forever. So all of that kind of stuff those kind of philosophies have led to me just not deleting anything. And then to me, that's just a cost. It's I almost look at it as like a hobby to not delete things in a weird way. Like, there is a philosophy behind it, but I also just enjoy building ridiculous computing arrays and storage stuff, and I think that's really fun. So it also gives me an excuse to play with those toys. Not deleting things becomes a hobby as well as a philosophy.
I mean, you do love playing with tech, and that's why every time I have a tech issue, I'm like, hey, Stuart, you want to help me out with this? Because chances are you've done it before. I mean, something that we're working on right now, I know this is getting a little derailed off topic, but is doing a tilt shift tilt shift lens when you don't actually pay thousands of dollars for a tilt shift lens, and you do 3D printing, you do all of that stuff, you have the know-how to be able to put that together for me. So
exactly, yeah, I'm always playing with new toys, as it were, or at least as I can afford to. So yeah, it is truly a hobby for me. Not deleting things is a hobby, or became a hobby at some point. Yeah, that's why I do it. Another reason why I do it, or why I don't do it. I don't delete things.
Awesome. Well, so since no matter what camp you're in, you do this for long enough, and you just have a massive thing to deal with. So something else that I thought would be interesting to add to this conversation is how do you organize your stuff? Because I know for me, if I have a client that's doing photo, I organize it different than if I have a client that's doing video, and I will organize that different than if I have my own thing, like I did a Star Wars themed pinup calendar, and I'm planning a new pinup calendar, so that calendar thing gets organized a little bit differently than either of those client projects. I thought it'd be and so I've seen photographers, they use the photos folder, whether on Mac or PC. They just drag stuff off their camera, throw it in the folders folder, and they're like, all right, cool, so where's that thing I did? And then I just die inside, and I'm like, no, nope, what are you doing?
That's not what I do.
So how do you organize your stuff?
Well, it varies a little bit depending on whether it's client work or my work. So anything I shoot is organized in I actually have multiple layers of this as things get older and less immediately relevant. So in my main storage server, I have everything either backed up or stored in some capacity. So that has, for my personal work, stuff by year, and then so it's all dates to start with. So it's year, and then month, and then day, and then I have one or multiple folders within that day, which correspond to device, and then all of the photos are named as they generally are by date and time, and that sort of stuff from there. So you can find exact down to the minute or second of photos. So it's all by date and then by device. Because often I'm shooting with more than one, especially with video stuff. I'll have like multiple cameras, or like when I was shooting stuff for the Great Barrier Reef, I actually had a GoPro that I was running at the same time as a more stills focused, although I still shot some videos on it. And then that allows me to throw it on a timeline and have everything lined up by time, because I can just be like, okay, this day, bring in this folder for this camera, bring in this folder for this camera, and then sync it all immediately. So that's how I organize that stuff. For client projects, it's different. I still organize them by year and frequently by month, unless it's a multi-month project. But then I'll actually have a descriptive folder that says, like, the client, and then within that, what project I was working on, if I'm working on multiple projects for them. So that varies a little bit more. It's still at least by year at minimum, so that I can find things by date that way. So it's all dates at the end of the day, and then how far you get into that depends on whether it's for me personally or for client work.
So I think one of the interesting things about that, of you shoving everything together in a timeline, for me, that would make absolutely no sense, because almost everything I shoot is discreetly for a specific person or a specific purpose. So it, like, I'm not looking for like, oh, what was the photo shot, March 5th of like, no, what was the photo that was shot for, John Smith. That's what I'm looking for. So I think for those of you at home, how you organize your photos will be dependent on what is it that like you need them for. What is kind of your lifestyle or your shooting style that you're gonna need to go back and get stuff for. And then you should really organize your photos to make life as easy as possible for you to be able to retrieve something when you need it.
Oh, totally. Like, we'll have philosophies that we're going to talk about right now, but this is not saying that you should follow exactly what we're doing, that this is the best way to do it. This is the best way to do it for us. But what makes sense to you is what you should do.
I also think that, though, for that person who just my sister, I'm looking at you. For that person who just throws photos into the photo folder, this is way better than what you're currently doing. Please start doing this, but then feel free to adapt it as you see fit.
Yeah, I should say use this as inspiration to start thinking about what's a good system for you. But don't necessarily say like, oh, I that system doesn't make sense to me. Why should I do it? Well, just use it as a jump off point to organize it the best way for you. Don't like mirror us exactly unless it fits perfectly for you for whatever reason.
Yeah, my organization system is everything is kind of in that photo dump folder, but it's just a very long list of folders in that photo dump folder. But so depending on what it is that I'm looking for, I can find it really quickly in that one folder. So every single folder, it starts with a 4-digit code, and the first two are year. So if it was 2019, it's going to be 19. I'm not worried about living 1,000 years and having that roll over on me. So, so it actually got really weird as soon as it changed to 2020, because now stuff is 20. And then so I do year first, then month, because if I did month, then year, then as the years go on, stuff would get jumbled up. So all the Januaries are next to each other, and that's no good. So yeah, year, month, I don't really care about the day. If I really care, I can right click properties and like find like what day was this photo shot. But yeah, just year, month is good enough for me. And then I will do the client's names. If it's a couple, I will put both clients' names. And then I will put what the thing is. Headshot, wedding, engagement session, pinup calendar. If I'm the client for like my own stuff, I will be a little more descriptive since I usually don't put my own name in. But so something that I learned is whatever you do, someone has to pay for it. So if I do something for me, I just like go to like a family birthday party and I shoot, brother, sister, nieces, grandparents. If I'm shooting at this birthday party, I'm the client. I'm the one paying for it with my time and resources. So I will put down Lucas family, event photography, time, date, and I organize all of my own stuff the same way that I organize the client stuff, because now it's not just a dump of, it's somewhere in the family folder. If they ask for, hey, do you have the photo you took last Christmas? Yes, I do. I can find it the same way I could find any client project.
That's probably the smarter way to do it.
So yeah, that's how I organize kind of on a top level thing. So just by typing in the search bar of if David asks for his photo, I just type in David last name, and then there are all the things that I've ever done for David just pop up just like that. Otherwise it's all ordered because I put those names in the file order by date. So I can be like, oh yeah, I shot that last month. I just scroll down a month. Inside all of those, that's where stuff gets a little more individualized depending on what I'm doing. So I'll have one folders for all the raw photos that I just dump in there. If I'm doing something that requires proofs, I'll have another photo of unedited JPEGs that get uploaded to the gallery for proofs. I'll have another folder for edits. So anything that I'm actually pulling into Photoshop and retouching that And I've worked at studios where they actually they have their own folders for PSDs and their own folders for JPEGs. But for me personally, I just find it easier to, hey, there's the PSD and the JPEG are there right next to each other. That's just easier for me.
So
but
that's actually interesting that you bring that up, because this is something that I am kind of rethinking a little bit, or considering rethinking, is how I, or if I separate the bottom level of stuff. So I will separate edited from unedited. Like I'll have a, in that day folder, device, whatever, I'll have an edited folder for stuff that are finals, like that I'm really pleased with. But I have gone back and forth between separating RAWs and JPEGs from each other, or keeping them all in the same folder. Ultimately, I'm editing from the RAWs if I have it, but I've gone back and forth with that. Right now, they are non-separated. They're all in the same folder. And some people are like, oh, I really like having them separate folders. I tried that a little bit, and it didn't feel like it was that helpful to me. Like you said, JPEGs and RAWs are right next to each other, so it's nice to be able
here's
to
why I
match
do
up.
it. So if I go into Lightroom, I import all the RAWs from that folder, right?
Yeah.
I do my tweaks, I shoot them all out. I don't put them in the same folder, because now what I'm doing is I'm going to Pixieset and I'm uploading to gallery, and I just select everything in that folder.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to upload, however many gigs. I'm just trying to upload the 200 megs of JPEG selects.
Yeah. That's fair. Yeah, it's just something like I just bring that up to illustrate that these systems aren't set in stone, or at least for me. Like yours feels very set in stone. For me, at least, it's not. Like this is how I like it right now, but I have actually more than once gone through, and thankfully I use various tools to do this, but I've reorganized every single thing that I've ever shot into a new system because I like that better. So it is totally fine. Assuming you have the time on your hands, it's totally fine to redo it. If you're just like, I thought this worked for me, but it doesn't work for me, that's okay. Make it work for you. The long-term savings in your time and stress will be worth it. But be very careful. Don't just do it on a whim. Test it first.
So I definitely tested a lot of things when I was organizing photos. So the thing that I figured out is I wanted an organization method that was non-proprietary. So if you were organizing through a piece of software, whether back in the day, Google had their own that was called Pixel? No.
It was Picasa.
Picasa.
Yeah.
So I organized everything in college through Google Picasa, and I meta tagged, and I'm like, it was so slick. And then they stopped supporting it, or just one little glitch happened and it untagged all my stuff. And that's when I realized I need something that is not linked to software. So for anyone at home who listened to our episode 0, Stuart, you're very much the tech guy. I'm more of the artistic type of I know tech, but I also hate tech, because so for me, if I buy a piece of technology, that thing should do exactly what it's supposed to do. That's why I bought it. So when it doesn't work, I get angry, really.
Yeah. That's fair.
So I don't like technology because technology fails. So for me, it's more of what's something that is dumb, and I know it's digital, but what is something that is more analog, so it's easy, but also something that is sophisticated enough, which is why all my folders have really long names. So the shoot that I would have for you, let's just say I shot it last month. So that would be, or let's say I shot it December of last year. So that'd be 2019, December. Stuart Merlantis, underwater portraits. So
Easy
it's
enough.
descriptive enough that I can find exactly what I'm looking for, but also dumb enough that my folder's not going to get renamed or untagged or something like that, or I move from Mac to PC and now all of the colored labels that you Mac users don't transfer, that type of thing.
Yeah.
So I just like something that's dumb and analog and works for everyone.
I should say that that one thing that might be helpful to people, and I'll say this with the kind of subtext, that if you are really concerned with how your data is handled and you don't approve of Google, fair enough. You don't need to take this advice. But one thing that might help people a little bit, if they're just swamped with stuff and they don't know how to get it in line, but they need to find stuff, you might consider throwing your library into Google Photos. They have a free tier that compresses your photos, but it's good enough for reference. And then you can actually search by year or even by face or by color or by, whatever it can glean from the photo and help you find stuff. So if you're just buried and you need help right now, you might consider pointing Google Photos at your library and having it go through that so that you can find stuff. That's just like a little quick tip if you don't mind that stuff being in Google Photos. Should you use it as really an archive? No, especially if you're using the free tier, because it compresses the photos that go into it. But if you just need help right now and you need to find something, I found that that's a pretty good way of doing it, and I've given that to clients or friends and stuff too, is like, hey, Google Photos is pretty darn powerful. It can recognize faces, it can recognize colors, it can grab dates and times and everything. It works pretty well. If you don't agree with Google's policies and you think you're worried about your how they're handling your data, fair enough, don't do it, but it does work pretty well. That being said, I worry a little bit less about that because I pay for a business Google account. So in theory, although they are reading my photos in theory, although they're reading my photos to make them searchable, they're not like including it in a large archive of data that is that they use in a more public fashion. I don't really trust that that's the case, but I don't have anything that's very secretive on Google Photos anyway. Anything that goes to that is stuff that I've designated as, yes, Google Photos, you can go through this stuff. So it's not everything, but it's stuff that I'm okay with them sorting through. So just something to think about. I know that people will probably bring that up as a thing is, well, what about automatic tools? What about Google Photos? What about Apple iCloud? What about whatever? Like, yeah, okay, that might work for you. It depends on the size of your library, how many clients you have, what you're doing. That might work. Just having an automated system might work, but for us, it doesn't. I just use it as kind of a nice thing to have occasionally. It's not what I rely on at all.
Right.
Yeah.
But I think that's a really great tip. So we'll go ahead and wrap up this episode. So I'm Ben Lucas. If you want to find me online, is at nomcreative on your social media of choice. If you want to drop us an email, the email is hello@photo-op.show. That is photo op show. So it is hello@photo-op.show.
Yep.
So that is the email if you want to drop us a question or give us an idea. And then Stuart, they can find you on Twitter.
Yep. So I'm all over the place. The best way to figure out what's currently going on with me is my name, which is long and complicated, but I'll spell it out for you. Twitter anyway, I'm at Stuart Marlantes, StuartMarlantes. I'm also on other social media under that name, and I've got a website under that name. So go to those places. Just search for my name. I'm the only one in the world, to my knowledge.
You
so
are the only one. Yeah, I've got a director in Australia, a rugby player, and a business photographer in Canada that all share my name.
Yeah. So I'm lucky enough that I can. Yeah, I'm lucky enough that I can just say search for my name, Stuart Marlantes, StuartMarlantes, and you will find everything related directly to me only. But yeah, Nom Creative is where you go for Ben.
All right. So yeah, that wraps up this episode. What are we talking about next time?
Well, we've got all sorts of stuff to talk about, but I think next time we're going to talk about building a photography website. This is a big topic, and boy, do we have opinions on it. So we can help you in your quest to build a photography website or rebuild a photography website or just get yourself in the headspace for building one. And that'll be our next show.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank all of you at home for watching and listening in, and we'll see you next time.
See you next time.